Good evening, everyone, and welcome back once again to the We Are Marshall podcast. My name is Stephen Marshall, and of course, this is my co-host, Bill McIntyre. Just two guys discussing the issues of the day, laying out the facts of those issues, giving you our viewpoint and our opinions on those issues. Here at the We Are Marshall podcast, we'd really like it if you would go to our social media and like and share on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Locals, X, Truth Social, and of course, go to Rumble. Rumble's a free application you can download, which is similar to YouTube, but it is a free speech platform. Download it for free, and then go fill in the search bar, the We Are Marshall podcast, and you'll have access to season 1 and all the episodes we're doing in season 2. Also, check out our webpage at www.wearemarshallpodcast.com. On there, there's a multitude of things that Bill and I are working on that you can get access to. Bill does have a blog. There's a link on his bio that you can click on and go read all of his blog posts. And if you also go to Amazon, Amazon has a thing called Vella. Vella is an episodic type of short story writing endeavor, and Bill has been writing stories there. So if you go to Amazon and click on that link, and we will get a link for you on the webpage for that eventually, that way you can go directly to it. But go check it out.
For now, know that there's a Bill McIntyre with a Y, so my name is McIntire. I am there. I made sure today that I'm there. So.
Okay, there you go. That's how you get to Bill's Vella and his episodic short stories and his blog or anything on that. And also on my side, on my bio, you can go check out my first novel on Amazon, The Unforeseen Enemy. And I do have one up there called The Perception Therapist, and I have a few I'm going to be releasing over the next few months as well. So do go to the website, check out what we got going on there, and we are building a members section for you folks. We'll have a multitude of other things that we'll discuss. Sports will be definitely one of the major proponents of that, I'm sure. But also, we'd love for you to support our sponsors who do support us. And if you go on our webpage, you can see one of our sponsors. That's Local Prints New Hampshire out of Hampstead, New Hampshire. They are a full-service screen printing business that is domestic and international. Click on the link that's in the top left of our webpage and go right to their website and see what they have to offer and give them some support and get some business to them. Also, check out mateconnector.com, a large dating website with all the bells and whistles of the big players in the dating market, but for a much less significant price than you do pay at those other features. So do check out everything we're doing here at the We Are Marshall podcast so we can continue to supply you with some good content. And with that being said, we're going to jump right into our first issue. And if you have any questions or issues you'd like to discuss about, some of the things we do on this podcast all the time, you can reach Bill at wearemarshallpodcast.com, and you can reach myself, Steve, at wearemarshallpodcast.com. Now, the first story I have for you is something that's been in the news for a while, and we are theming most of our issues, so Bill's will correlate to what he starts with, and I'll do the same. But this first one is Hunter Biden testifies he did not involve his father in his businesses, calls an impeachment inquiry baseless. Hunter Biden testified Wednesday that he did not involve his father in his businesses, while blasting House Republicans for having hunted him in their partisan political pursuit and impeachment inquiry into his father. Hunter Biden appeared on Capitol Hill Wednesday for his closed-door deposition at the House Oversight and Judiciary Committees. Hunter Biden said Republicans have no evidence against his father because there isn't any, according to an opening statement obtained by Fox News. I am here today to provide the committees with the one uncontestable fact that should end the false premise of this inquiry. I did not involve my father in my business, Hunter Biden testified Wednesday morning. Not while I was a practicing lawyer, not in my investments or transactions, domestic or international, not as a board member and not as an artist, never. You read this fact in the many letters that have been sent to you over the last year as part of your so-called impeachment investigation. You heard this fact when I said it weeks ago, standing outside of this building. You heard this fact from a parade of other witnesses, former colleagues and business partners of mine, including my uncle, who have testified before you in similar proceedings. And now today, You hear this fact directly from me, he continued in his opening statement. The first son said that for more than a year, the committees have hunted me in your partisan political pursuit of my dad. You have trafficked in innuendo, distortion, and sensationalism, all the while ignoring the clear and convincing evidence staring you in the face. You do not have evidence to support the baseless and MAGA motivated conspiracies about my father because there isn't any, he testified. The first son said House Republicans have built your entire partisan house of cards on lies told by past witnesses. Hunter Biden blasted his ex-business associates Tony Bobulinski and Jason Galanis, who also testified as part of the impeachment inquiry, and the since indicted former FBI informant Alexander Smirnov. Rather than follow the facts as they have been laid out before you in bank records, financial statements, correspondence, and other witness testimony, you continue your frantic search to prove the lies you and those you rely on keep peddling. Yes, they are lies, he said. Hunter Biden, reflecting on mistakes he has made in his life, said he has squandered opportunities and privileges that were afforded to me. I know that. I am responsible for that, and I am making amends for that. But my mistakes and shortcomings are my own and not my father's, who has done nothing but devote his entire life to public service and trying to make this country a better place to live, he said. And reflecting on his battle with addiction, Hunter Biden said his father was there for him. He helped save my life. His love and support made it possible for me to get sober, stay sober, and rebuild my life as a father, husband, son, and brother, he testified. What he got in return for being a loving and supportive parent is a barrage of hate-filled conspiracy theories that hatched this sham impeachment inquiry and continue to fuel unrelenting personal attacks against him and me. Hunter Biden went on to point to records of his text messages, emails, and other communications that the committees have obtained. Republicans have taken my communications out of context, relied on documents that have been altered, and cherry-picked snippets of financial or other records to misrepresent what really happened, he said. Examples of this include a few references to my family in emails or texts that I sent when I was in the darkest days of my addiction. He added, if you try to do that again today, my answers will reveal your tactics and demonstrate the truth that my father was never involved in any of my businesses. The first son said he hopes his testimony will put an end to this baseless and destructive political charade. You have wasted valuable time and resources attacking me and my family for your own political gain when you should be fixing the real problems in this country that desperately need your attention, he testified. Hunter Biden's testimony comes after his uncle, President Biden's younger brother, James Biden, testified last week as part of the impeachment inquiry. James Biden testified that President Biden has never had any involvement or any direct or indirect financial interest in his business ventures. House Republicans have heard testimony from a number of the first son's former business associates, like Tony Bobulinski, who testified before the committees earlier this month that Joe Biden was involved in the family's business venture. He also testified that he personally met with him. Days before Bobulinski's testimony, another former business associate, Rob Walker, testified that Joe Biden met with the chairman of the Chinese energy firm CEFC that his brother and son did business with. After Walker's testimony, the House Oversight Committee said it was able to now confirm Joe Biden met with nearly every foreign national who funneled money to his son. House Democrats in the White House have criticized the inquiry as baseless, but Republicans insist they have just scratched the surface of the investigation into the Biden family business. The House Oversight, Judiciary, and Ways and Means Committees have unearthed a record of evidence revealing Joe Biden was the brand his family sold to enrich the Bidens. House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer, of course he's a Republican, said in statement Tuesday, Joe Biden knew of, participated in, and benefited from these schemes. Joe Biden attended dinners, spoke on speakerphone, showed up to meetings, and had coffee with his son's foreign business associates. In fact, we've documented how Joe Biden has met with nearly all of his son's foreign business associates as they were collectively funneling millions to the Bidens. Our committees have the opportunity to depose Hunter Biden, a key witness in our impeachment inquiry of President Joe Biden, about the record of evidence This deposition is not the conclusion of the impeachment inquiry. There are more subpoenas and witness interviews to come. He added that the committee will continue to investigate to determine whether articles of impeachment are warranted. Now, let's be real on this story, okay? You got Hunter Biden on one thing saying you have business associates of mine saying that there was no contact, no business dealings, but then you have business associates with him saying that there was. So who's telling the truth here, okay? He wants to pull up these ones that only tell his story. What about the ones that are telling the story that's going on? Okay, so they both got some balance there. But the first thing is, Bill, let's be real. There is no endeavor that you and I would ever have in our life, or any person, human nature-wise, that isn't going to discuss with their parents or their brothers. It's just human nature. It's what we do when we do things, have accomplishments. Those are the people we share things within our life. So that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
They also have him on camera in many meetings. They have him on speakerphone. I mean, come on. Why are you coming on speakerphone if you have nothing to do with anything? Why couldn't you just wait till he finished his meeting and then have a conversation with your father? The gaslighting on this is ridiculous. The media is ridiculous in their gaslighting, and the Democrats are ridiculous in their gaslighting. But we've already talked about the gaslighting word, Bill. That's all they seem to be doing right now. What are you thinking about all this stuff going on?
Well, I think the gaslighting issue is something we should continue to pound on this podcast, Steve, because I think that something that we've always held very dear, in our conversations, is that people they have two options. They either want to see the truth or they don't. Okay, and it seems like the truth is out there. Okay, now I'm not sure why this is such an ordeal still, because the evidence is pretty much overwhelming. That a lot of collusion happened. Every denial has already been made, and then has almost without exception has been debunked, for lack of a better word. Joe had said that he never attended, any kind of meeting then they have video of him at a dinner with several executives, and Hunter of all people is there with him. They have that video of Hunter setting it up. Remember when Hunter would talk to somebody, and Joe would talk to somebody and set him up.
Hunter steps in to do the business.
Hunter's standing about 1 foot off a camera, and all of a sudden he walks up with a business card. Hey, let's talk.
But they don't talk business. I mean,
no. But the thing is, though, is that I'm not speaking as a conservative here, and I'm not trying to take an antagonistic approach. I like to think that I'm looking at this open-mindedly. The evidence is there, and frankly, it should be. I don't know why the Republicans can't close the deal on this, because this has gone on way too long. Okay, the people don't recognize how important this is, and why a conviction. I don't know if they're looking for a conviction, or if they're looking for just something, probably an impeachment, right? Or to keep Joe from running again, which is no better than the Democrats are doing with Trump. But the fact is that the situation is it's pretty much a slam dunk. They've got the bank deposits, they've got all the text messages, they've got the brand, they've got narrowed down that several people have confessed that the brand is Joe, and that the, if you will, that the conduit, to the brand is Hunter. Okay, and all this, and yet they continue to act like it's a non-story. It's a story, because people have to ask themselves one question. Well, two, do you care about the fact that, influence is for sale? And do you wonder what was paid for and how it affects your life? That's what I can't get past.
That second question is the key.
Yeah,
what was paid for? What did they get from this? And that, I think that's what they're hiding behind, Bill. Right. To be honest, we know that
energy policy, right? Think about that.
Yeah, I mean, any of it. Like the bottom line is they have evidence that they received something. Right. But where's the evidence they're having trouble is what was given for it. That's going to be that's the toughest one to prove. Right. And the Democrats know it. That's why they continue to bang this gaslighting drum.
And they do. They should be smart and distance themselves from the whole thing and realize that their guy's in trouble, and just let the process take its course. But as usual, there we go with the gaslighting again. It's a very legitimate term, and we need to talk about this constantly, because gaslighting is just convincing people by repeating falsehoods over and over again that they're wrong until they finally believe that they're wrong, and they go, what happened? And actually, the true definition of gaslighting is you're supposed to make somebody actually lose their mind over it. That's the actual true
Well,
definition of it.
they have made people lose their mind. I mean, the epitome of gaslighting for me from the left was when CNN was during the George Floyd protests, and there was an anchor on air, and he's like, "All these protests are peaceful," and blah. But behind him, literally behind him, there's a building on fire. It's just that if that's not the epitome of what they do in gaslighting, I don't know what to say. But good stuff. I'm going to get a little bit more into it on my second topic. I want to hand this over now at the We Are Marshall podcast to Bill. Bill's going to tackle his first topic. Dive right in, my friend.
All right, Steve. Thank you. I just want to thank everybody for listening in, and check out all the stuff that Steve was offering up in this shameless plug segment that we had earlier. He's got some good stuff out there. I'm reading his book right now, and he's got some good stuff. And check out our sponsors. No, that's right. Check out our sponsors, Local Print in Hampstead, New Hampshire, and of course the dating site. I'm going to talk a little bit something about a big story that is highly significant to those of us who look at the world and look at the dynamics of how things play out. And let's talk about NATO, okay, for a minute, because this also involves another very hot topic, which is Russia. And then we have another hot topic, which is Ukraine. So what happened is this past week, a very notable event occurred in Hungary that involves Sweden, which of course affects Russia, which of course affects the rest of the world, okay? So what happened was Sweden cleared their last hurdle in its bid to join NATO when Hungary's parliament voted to ratify the move. After 2 years of unexplained delay, in which Hungary basically all they could offer up was that they were opposed to it because they felt they weren't getting enough respect. That's quotation of fingers from Sweden. But the fact is that it was a critical move. Both Finland and Sweden in 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, recognized the need for collective protection, and they were willing to sacrifice their neutrality status. Finland was approved, but again, like I said, Sweden was made to hold out for 2 years to get approval, as they just continue to sit there and worry about Russian aggression. So what happened was last week, Hungary's parliament cleared the way for the Nordic countries' accession, finally, to the military alliance NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, after almost 2 years of intense negotiations. Now, Hungary's been criticized by the EU for its democratic and rule of law record. And they gave no specific reasons for the lengthy period of opposition, but they really were adamant about it, and Hungary was the final vote. So that's very interesting. So of course, given the fact that I want to break away for a second and state that NATO was largely created to create a North American influence in Europe with a three-pronged aim, which is deterring Soviet expansionism, forbidding the revival of nationalist militarism in Europe, and encouraging European political integration, which is basically say we'll never have a USSR or a Nazi Germany ever again. This is what they're talking about here. But Russia is at the forefront because Germany is no longer an expansionist threat. And Russia, of course, had a response to Sweden's acceptance of NATO. They are not for it, if I have to give a spoiler. So, having said that, the Russian Foreign Ministry on Wednesday had said it will take military/technical steps in response to Sweden's accession to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Russian President Vladimir Putin, who has yet to make a public statement, has been very outspoken in the past and recently about his opposition to the expansion of NATO for obvious reasons, given the reasons why they created it. And he has cited the possibility of the alliance growing as a justification for his invasion of Ukraine on February 24, 2022. So if you notice, we just had the 2-year anniversary of that event, and it's pretty close to the anniversary that Sweden was accepted. So he said it was the Ukraine war that spurred Finland and Sweden to simultaneously submit letters of application, and that's correct. So Putin has also yet to publicly comment on what he's going to do, but he had a spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, provide a statement to Newsweek magazine when asked about the successful vote for Sweden's bid. He said, as we have repeatedly said, NATO enlargement in no way contributes to stability and security on the continent. And that's a valid point, but it's a moot point because that is not what it's about. They're trying to get the benefit of collective protection that NATO offers. So they're worried about this inciting war. In actuality, that's not the intent at all. But Russian Foreign Ministry spokesman Maria Zakharova said during a press briefing, that Russia's response to Sweden's NATO membership will be determined by Stockholm's actions. It said, on our part, we will closely monitor what Sweden will be doing in the aggressive military bloc, how it will implement its membership in actuality, and accordingly, proceeding from this, we will formulate our response policy course and retaliatory steps, keyword, of a military, technical, and other nature to curb threats to Russia's national security, which emerge as a result. And then Zakharova said that Moscow's countermeasures will depend on what will appear on Swedish soil, how contingents will be deployed, what events will take place, and what strategy will be adopted. Now, let's take a second and go back and look at those two paragraphs, okay? On our part, the previous paragraph went, we will closely monitor what Sweden will be doing in the aggressive military bloc and how it will implement its membership in actuality. What that means is that they're going to be watching exactly how much they build up their troops, what they're going to do. And the second paragraph is basically about the possibility of other nations placing armaments, possibly nuclear warheads, within Sweden as part of arming them as being a part of NATO. Now, the key here is NATO is not an aggressive offensive organization. They're strictly defensive. They are not looking to start anything. They're only looking to give nations the benefit of other nations' help in the event that their sovereignty is questioned. Okay, but it's very critical how they mention that, because if we remember, many countries at post World War II, by Russia and by us, we're planting bombs everywhere, missile silos everywhere, and it became a massive issue. And most of the negotiations were about removing this and that from different nations. So this is a very important thing how they're saying this. So they're watching this carefully to look for something they consider to be an offensive possible threat to them, which means they're ramping up the possibility of acting out again. And there's no other way to read that.
Let me ask you while you're on that subject.
By all means, good.
While you're on that subject, do you think that they have a valid reason to feel the way they do?
I know you do.
I'm not asking me. I'm asking you.
But I know you do, and you have. We've talked about this before, and you said that Russia feels they're being threatened. I don't agree, though. I think what we're looking at here is other countries are clearly only seeking protection against a very large aggressive neighbor.
Okay, hold on. Let's evaluate that. So we can. This is just an exercise here.
Sure.
So let's say Russia became friends with Canada, and they started putting weapons on Canada soil. Would you feel that would be a threat to the U.S.?
No, because under the auspices of NATO, they're not in any way intending to use anything other than a defensive capacity.
Well, I agree with the defense.
So any missiles placed on our neighbor's property, yes, it would enable a neighbor. And let's just face it, our neighbors are pretty friendly. Okay, Mexico and Canada are friendly. Okay, so Europe isn't that friendly, but by the book, and yes, of course, that can always change.
Yeah,
the missiles, the armaments, and everything, whether it's surveillance equipment or whatever, that these countries are adopting under the auspices of NATO, all they're doing is putting that there to provide a viable defense in the event that they are aggressed upon.
There's nothing. Russia would only be putting them in
offensive about it,
But Russia would only be putting them there, say, in Canada for defense for themselves. What the reason I say this is you said it, and I want you to reiterate. Why was NATO created?
To almost specifically to curb Russian aggression.
Okay, so if you now got countries joining NATO, which was built for that, and we're going to put weapons right there, I mean, I can understand them. I mean, I get it. Just like Ukraine. Ukraine is like Mexico or Canada to Russia. And what we're doing there, I can understand them being a little concerned. The only problem I have is Putin is an imperialist. He does want the whole Russia back the way it was. So I will agree with you to a point, but I do get it. It's a sovereign nation. Why do we, as a country, and I'm just being the devil's advocate on this
by all
subject.
means. I'm glad you're bringing
Why
this up.
should we, as the U.S., be able to just put stuff wherever the hell we want? But they can't.
That's a great question. We only are doing this because Russia is not afraid. As an example, Russia is not afraid in any way of Sweden. Okay, Sweden has a sophisticated army. They have some high-end fighter planes. Some state of the art, if you will. I hate that expression, but state of the art fighter planes. They're not a large military, but they're not inept. Okay, but they're a very small fish. Russia could pretty much, if they wanted to,
take over Sweden
quickly, right?
Like nothing
before lunch, probably. Okay, but the thing is, though, is NATO now provides the fact that it's like the UN, right? Now all of a sudden, you're not only attacking Sweden, an affront against one of our allies is an affront against all of us. Is what the
hope is the deterrence with all of that.
Right.
I get you,
and that's where this. You make a valid point, though. I don't think Russia should sit back either and say, "Okay, I understand," but they have to recognize the reasoning for this in the first place. They're acting like assholes on the world stage. Come on.
Well, and that's another thing. Like, are they acting like that? Ukraine used to belong to Russia, so. I mean, it's this is the thing with people. They don't really look at the full subject of this. They just look at it. Ukraine is Ukraine now, not what it was when Russia was annexed and broken up. Right. This is what happened. So the problem is
Ukraine's a friendly nation. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Ukraine is a friendly nation to whom?
To the world. They're a very large provider of many vital resources. They haven't had an expansionist mentality. They kind of just want to do their thing. And their biggest enemy is getting.
I would say Ukraine is the most corrupt country on the planet.
But they're not militaristic, and they're not trying to expand.
Well, yeah, they don't have militaristic, but you can do a lot more with money than you can the military, and we both know that. So
if you dig into Ukraine's resources, they're like top 10 in 50 or 60 of the categories of massive imports. Exports, like wheat, for example.
And that's Russia's big want. That's why they want that. But good stuff.
So it's not a simple topic, Steve. You're right. Absolutely is.
It's not. And we will probably talk about this for a while because the Russia-Ukraine war is going to continue to persist until we see what happens in our election coming up this November, which will be a major subject for us to discuss this whole year.
I think this was an important topic, and I hope you agree.
Absolutely is. Yep. So we're going to move on here at the We Are Marshall podcast. Please go like, share, and subscribe on Rumble and our multitude of social media, and let everybody know who we are. Check out our sponsors, Local Prints New Hampshire and MateConnector.com, and also go check out our website at www.wearemarshallpodcast.com. Now, the next story I'm going to go is going to really get in a little bit more on the minutia of what's going on with Hunter, James, Joe, all this stuff. And it was because James, Joe's brother, Joe Biden, was just grilled behind closed doors in critical interview with Republicans as the GOP looks for lifeline in its impeachment probe. Now, I don't think it's a lifeline. I don't like how it's going, but this is the way this story is playing out, and we will discuss what comes out of it afterwards. But House Republicans are entering a critical phase of their impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden as a pair of high-stakes interviews with the president's son, Hunter, and brother James over the next 2 weeks could determine the fate of their flailing investigation. The closed-door interview with the president's brother Wednesday comes as Republicans in recent weeks have hauled in a series of Biden family business associates who testified, based on first-hand experience, Joe Biden was not involved in his family's foreign business dealings, undermining the allegation at the heart of their entire investigation. Hunter Biden is expected to show for his closed-door interview next week after intense deliberations that almost collapsed. It all amounts to a do-or-die moment for the Republicans leading the investigation, as they are up against serious doubts growing inside the GOP that they will be able to convince their razor-thin majority to back the politically perilous impeachment effort in an election year. Top Republicans are expected to make an official decision on whether to pursue impeachment articles after the James and Hunter Biden interviews, sources told CNN. But the green light may need to ultimately come from rookie House Speaker Mike Johnson, who has struggled to make calls on key issues that are divisive to his conference.
Yeah, he's lacking support.
Yeah, he is big time. But the Republican Party is not a team. They are a disjointed group. So, but James Biden was spotted on Capitol Hill entering his deposition shortly before 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and the interview ended a little over 8 hours later. He said in his opening statement that his brother has never had any involvement or any direct or indirect financial interest in his 50-year career in a variety of business ventures, according to a copy obtained by CNN. Because of my intimate knowledge of my brother's personal integrity and character, as well as my own strong ethics, I have always kept my professional life separate from our close personal relationship, James Biden said. I never asked my brother to take any official action on behalf of me, my business associates, or anyone else, he added. James Biden's attorney, Paul Fishman, said in a statement that his client was unequivocal in his testimony that the president was not involved in his brother's business ventures. Jim Biden was unequivocal that his brother played no role in, was not involved with, and received no benefits from any of Jim's business ventures, Fishman said. The information that he provided confirms that this impeachment inquiry is a waste of time, resources, and taxpayer money. Since December, Republicans have interviewed 8 people who work closely with James and Hunter Biden, and none of the hundreds of pages of witness testimony provides evidence that the president was involved in or benefited from his family's business ventures. Whether it was stopping by a business lunch, overseeing his bookkeeping, an exchange at a White House 4th of July picnic, or a phone call, business associates of the Biden family orbit said they never witnessed Joe Biden do anything wrong. While Biden's surface-level interactions that overlapped with his family's business activities continue to provide fuel to his political opponents, particularly since the president remains adamant that he never interacted with any of them. But they just said in this article there were surface-level interactions that were agreed upon, but then he's saying he didn't interact. I mean, it's contradicting itself. But
Steve, can I ask what a surface-level interaction is? I mean, I think it's
once again the Democrats just trying to redefine words. There is no surface level. You either interacted with someone or you did not. Right. That's all there is to it.
That's kind of where I was leading you on
exactly.
that one.
Just a rhetorical question.
That is gaslighting. It depends on what is, you know?
Exactly. That's what I mean, the redefinition of words that they do. Yeah. But the recent testimony has not uncovered evidence that meets the bar for high crimes and misdemeanors needed for impeachment, according to skeptical House Republicans. And just last week, Special Counsel David Weiss charged a former FBI informant with lying about the president and his son Hunter Biden's involvement in business dealings with Ukrainian energy company Burisma Holdings, undercutting a major aspect of Republicans' impeachment inquiry. In another blow to Republicans' impeachment effort, the ex-informant Alexander Smirnov told investigators after his arrest that Russian intelligence officials were involved in passing information to him about the younger Biden. Prosecutors said Tuesday in a court filing, noting that the information was false. After the latest bombshell, Republicans on Wednesday were asked the FBI why they ever relied on the informant in the first place. For 10 years. Let that sink in, people. 10 years they relied on Alexander Smirnov, and then all of a sudden, he's not credible. I mean, ridiculous. The latest example of how House Republicans are trying to downplay the informant they once championed. The DOJ and FBI have a lot of explaining to do about their reliance on the informant, whose allegations were included in the FBI-generated FD 1023 Oversight Committee Republicans wrote on X. House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan refused to concede that the president was not involved in a bribery scheme when asked about the latest developments involving the informant. Asked by CNN if he promoted false allegations, the Ohio Republican said, not at all. Republicans hope James and Hunter Biden, who are the closest they have come to infiltrating the president's inner circle, will provide new information about the elder Biden that will inject momentum into their inquiry. GOP investigators, in desperate search of a much-needed lifeline, are also looking to tie special counsel Robert Hur's report on Biden's handling of classified documents to their investigation. Democrats, meanwhile, see the interviews of the president's son and brother as the linchpin that could finally unravel the entire probe. In James Biden, Republicans have found their most direct piece of evidence that connects to the president in the form of 2 personal checks addressed to Joe Biden when he was not in office. But banking records reviewed by CNN provide substantial evidence that both were loan repayments and not the smoking gun Republicans had made them out to be. The first check Republicans revealed went to Joe Biden in 2018 for $200,000 from James Biden and James's wife Sarah Biden. The check has the words loan repayment written on the front and was written to the president the same day that James Biden received $200,000 from a struggling health company he did business with. How ironic. The second check rolled out by Republicans, which also has the notation loan repayment, was from the president's brother and wife to Joe Biden in September 2017 for $40,000. House Oversight Chairman James Comer has repeatedly said he does not believe that Joe Biden had actually made a loan to his brother and claims the $40,000 check is laundered China money. Democratic members of the committee and a lawyer for James Biden have said that Comer's committee has documents that show there had indeed been a $200,000 loan from Joe Biden to James Biden. Banking records reviewed by CNN, which Comer's committee possesses, provide substantial evidence in support of the Democrats' assertions. In his opening remarks Wednesday, James Biden's explanation addressed the two personal loan repayment checks. The complete explanation is that Joe lent me money, and I repaid him as soon as I had the funds to do so, he said, according to the copy of his remarks obtained by CNN. He explained that there have been a number of occasions when my personal financial obligations have exceeded our available funds. He described the loans from Joe Biden as short-term, that he received when his brother was a private citizen and repaid within weeks. He had no information at all about the source of the funds I used to repay him, James Biden added. The evidence CNN has reviewed is almost certainly only a fraction of the evidence Comer's Republican-controlled committee has obtained, given that the committee subpoenaed years of financial records. The fraction CNN has seen does not prove with absolute certainty that there was a loan. It's good that they at least put that in there, because everything alluding before that, they were not saying that. But even the small batch of evidence clearly shows that the Democrats have documents at least partially substantiating their assertions about the check, and that Comer has not yet released some documents that undercut his efforts to raise public suspicions about the Bidens. Beyond that, James Biden has touted his connection with his politically powerful brother, former business associates say, echoing claims that the president's family sold the idea of the Biden brand and leveraging business dealings around the world. But that perception does not support claims made by Republicans, including Comer, a Kentucky Republican who has painted Joe Biden as a president compromised and framed the Bidens as a crime family. To infiltrate James Biden's orbit, Republicans interviewed Carol Fox, the bankruptcy trustee who oversaw the bankruptcy of AmeriCorps, the healthcare company James Biden worked with that paid him the same day he paid Joe Biden $200,000. Fox alleged in a 2020 lawsuit that James Biden used representations that his last name, Biden, could open doors that he could obtain a large investment from the Middle East based on his political connections. While Fox had questions about James Biden's role at AmeriCorps during her closed-door interview, she said she was not aware of any evidence that Joe Biden was involved in his brother's business ventures. In his opening statement, James Biden said, "My brother played no role, was not involved with, and received no benefits from my work with AmeriCorps." He said he did not think the $600,000 AmeriCorps paid him was a loan, but after court mediation, he repaid $350,000 in 4 increments. "I continue to believe that I fully and fairly earned the $600,000 for services rendered," he said. Republicans have also interviewed Joseph Langston, who has known the president and his brother since the 1990s. Langston, who was convicted for trying to bribe a judge, has loaned James Biden money over the years and became involved in various business ventures with him. Langston said he has not talked to Joe Biden in more than 15 years and said absolutely not when asked if Joe Biden received any money from business ventures he was involved in. Jimmy Biden has never once, in my experience, offered his brother's participation, help, influence in any business matter, Langston said, according to a transcript of his closed-door testimony. Republicans called in Rob Walker, who worked with the Biden family on business pursuits in foreign countries, including China and Romania, and made wire transfers to companies associated with Hunter and James Biden. Walker also attended a 2017 business meeting with Hunter Biden and Chinese business associates where Joe Biden made an appearance. Republicans have raised questions about the meeting because shortly after, Walker received a $3 million from the Chinese officials, a third of which was later sent to Hunter Biden and other Biden family members. In his interview, Walker testified to be clear. President Biden, while in office or as a private citizen, was never involved in any of the business activities we pursued. Any statement to the contrary is simply false. Walker said of the 2017 business meeting at the Four Seasons Hotel in Washington, D.C., that Joe Biden, who was then a private citizen, was there maybe 10 minutes. But he was there. It doesn't matter how long. He spoke
completely
nice.
distances from what the original claim was, that I was miles and miles and miles away from all of this, right?
I mean, there's so much evidence. It's ridiculous. But he spoke nice, normal pleasantries work. Walker said of Biden, I don't believe even really knew why they were there. He specifically said, good luck in whatever you guys are doing. That's why Joe Biden showed up in the first place. Walker said, I don't know. But I think that from time to time, he liked to lay eyes on his son, who was in and out of sobriety. Oh, my goodness. Walker said he has
playing
no
the dad and the sobriety angle a little too hard here. They really are.
They are playing anything they can to deviate from it. But let's be real. Who's going to admit to this? But Walker said he has no knowledge that Joe Biden was aware of the payments he and his son received from the Chinese officials. Another longtime Biden family business associate, Eric Schwerin, performed administrative and bookkeeping tasks for then Vice President Joe Biden from 2009 to 2017. In the course of performing these duties, I had the ability to view transactions both into and out of Vice President Biden's bank accounts while he was vice president. Based on that insight, I am not aware of any financial transactions or compensation that Vice President Biden received related to business conducted by any of his family members or their associates, nor any involvement by him and their businesses, none, Schwerin testified, who worked with Hunter and James Biden on a joint venture involving a Chinese-backed energy company that dissolved in 2018, testified he had no contact with Joe Biden. Hunter Biden's lawyer, Kevin Morris, said neither the president nor his administration had any role in deciding to loan Hunter Biden over $6.5 million. Even the critical but unproven allegations against Joe Biden brought by Tony Bobulinski remain uncorroborated and have been undercut by other witnesses the committees have interviewed. And while Hunter Biden's art dealer, Burgess, raised questions on the timeline of when the White House said ethical safeguards around Biden's art were put in place and when the White House got involved, Burgess said he has never spoken to the president about the pricing of his son's artwork. Burgess, who has been who told committee investigators he met the president when Hunter Biden's daughter got married at the White House in 2022, recounted the one time the president called him. My daughter finished camp, and he called to, wish her, congratulate her for finishing camp, and I answered the phone, Burgess said. I mean, you can sit here and listen to this story, and there's so much evidence in it that they just try to detract or send in a different direction. The bottom line, Joe Biden said he wasn't around any of these people. He is around these people. Joe Biden said he never was in any dealings. But ironically, he happened to call on speakerphone to a number of them. I mean, if anybody can sit here just with those two things, him lying about meeting but being caught with them, him lying about having any contact but being caught on the phone, and you're going to be naive to think he had nothing to do with this situation, then so be it. You be naive, but I'm not going to be. There is definitively something going on here, and this is why I think that this investigation should continue. I'm not saying that we should have an impeachment warranted yet, but I do feel that this investigation is warranted to continue. There's more evidence in this than there was against Trump and his two impeachments, yet the Republicans won't play ball like the Democrats did and try to shove one right up Joe Biden's ass like they should. What do you have to say, Bill?
Well, what kills me here is that what looked like overwhelming evidence, and like I said, obviously I can't look you in the eye and tell you that I know that the president is guilty, nor do I necessarily want him to be. I don't. I want the president, whoever it is, regardless of party, I don't care if he's independent. If the president of the United States is influence peddling, That is just simply wrong. It needs to be dealt with, okay? The thing about the situation that bothers me is that Joe has to know, because Joe certainly wouldn't ever allow his sons to use his name without his consent. Never mind without paying him for it, okay? Because they could consequently, as well as they might be trying to enrich, Joe's bank account, because Joe actually did not have a lot of money for a long-term politician until he became president. His net worth has significantly improved, like almost suspiciously. The fact is, though, is that what we have here is that if Joe was going, if his boys were going to sell his name, he'd have to be privy to it, because if they weren't successful, they could damage his career as much as they could enhance it, right?
Absolutely.
So obviously he has to know what's going on, okay? And the fact is that he may have done a good job, but we saw the emails, we saw the letters, we saw 10% for the big guy. These are all things that are being lost, and the Republicans' inability to just what more do you need? People are still saying they need more, and it seems to be the people with the loudest voice are the ones saying we need more, and the people who supposedly have the truth, the righteous truth on this side, which in this case is the Republicans, they're not able to close the door on this. They're not able to just end it, shut it down, and reach a situation in which it's actually dealt with. And I fear that some very guilty people are gonna end up innocent on this. Now, the Wall Street Journal has said that James Biden's testimony, as well as Hunter Biden's testimony, both gave away everything, revealed everything the Republicans said against them. But that's not what's being reported, is it?
No, it's not at
nothing
all.
definitive, no smoking gun. How many times have we heard that, right? No smoking gun, no actual evidence. It's hearsay, it's conjecture, it's influence peddling, and it's a big deal. That's all I got to say on that.
Well, the Democrat Party should be a little scared of what's going on here, but they're not, because they know what
they're terrified.
I don't.
If it gets proven, this is going to be devastating to them.
Well, if it gets proven, but I think this let's look at the loan, okay? Very easy for me to hand you a check and say loan repayment, right?
Oh God, yeah.
Show me the money that Joe Biden lent them.
Right.
I want to see that.
Where's the deposit that shows he deposited that check and paid out
he wrote to them? Right. Yeah. And then on top of it, Joe Biden's been in Congress his whole life, right?
Yeah.
He's saying that he lent him $200,000, correct?
Yeah.
Isn't that more than Joe Biden's yearly salary?
Oh, he's been in it since 1976, so I don't know.
Yeah, they don't go. They all have the fixed income at that. It's not like he gets more money because he's been there.
They're all rich, Steve. So that argument's out the window. Every one of them, including the president. The president. Well,
it's really not out the window,
year, right?
I agree with you that they do nefarious things. I mean, we can go to Pelosi and a bunch of other people, Mitch McConnell, how they made all this money. But the bottom line is, Joe Biden only made, I believe, $175,000 was his salary a year. That's more than a yearly salary.
And he was one of the poorest savers in the history of Congress as far as his own personal wealth. He never really amassed a true bank account before he became vice president. That's true also.
So he didn't have to, because Hunter Biden was paying all his bills, which he said right in a text to his daughter. So let's be realistic. People, either you texted someone and said that, and that's it. You can't sit there and say, "Oh, I was a drug addict, so I just sent it because I was in a drug-fueled thing." What? No. I mean, come on.
No.
Anybody that
Stalin probably loved his kids too. Okay?
What we need to do, and I wish the exercise could be done, is I would like you to take all this evidence, instead of the Biden name, remove Biden and put the Trump name there. What would happen then?
Automatically guilty.
Trump would be guilty. Exactly. As much as I don't care for the guy, I am for fairness, and you can see it. If you took Biden out and Trump there, he'd already be convicted. But I'm not going to keep banging this drum, because I'm going to keep watching this. I want to move on and let you jump right in. You got a couple segments here, but I just think that's good stuff for people to pay attention to. So here we are at the We Are Marshall podcast. What I'd really like with that stuff is give me an email. Question me. Call me out at steve@wearemarshallpodcast.com. And if you want to dialogue with Bill about any of it, get him at bill@wearemarshallpodcast.com. So now we're going to move on to the next couple of segments, and we're going to hand it over to Bill to take those. Let's go, Bill. Let's see what you got.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, so I mentioned NATO, and sticking with the theme, I would like to assume that a lot of people know what NATO is, but maybe would like to know a little more. And there are probably some people who really don't know a lot about it, because at one point I was one of them. So I want to talk about what NATO actually is. I brushed over it a little while ago about how it was created and all that, what it actually is. And it'll put a little more perspective on how Sweden struggled so much to get approval on this. NATO was founded by 12 countries in 1949. Okay. This is obviously post-World War II in the rebuilding phase. The 12 founding member countries of NATO: Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, the UK, and the United States. Now, with the exception of Canada, France, in Italy, United States, and whatever, they're very small countries that needed protection. Okay, so a lot of the protection came from the larger players in this group, which of course the United States is one of them. Membership has now expanded to 31 countries, including Albania, Lithuania, Bulgaria, Montenegro, Croatia, Czech Republic, Poland, Estonia, Romania, Germany, Slovakia, Greece, Slovenia twice, Finland, and now Sweden. That's the rough brush in there. 3 additional countries have declared their desire to join the alliance: Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is, of course, with the Balkan War, Georgia, the Russian province, and Ukraine, former Russian province. Membership is officially open to any European state in a position to further the principles of this treaty and to contribute to the security of the North Atlantic area. The decision was to invite a country to join NATO was made by consensus of the member nations. Okay. Now, the NATO membership process is fascinating but exhausting. You would think it was created by Congress. Okay. The NATO membership process has multiple steps. First, NATO has to officially invite members to begin accession talks with the alliance. According to NATO, the accession talks at its headquarters in Brussels, Belgium, are aimed at obtaining formal confirmation from the invitees of their willingness and ability to meet the political, legal, and military obligations and commitments of NATO membership, as laid out in the Washington Treaty and the study on NATO enlargement. The countries seeking entrance to the alliance must agree to undertake any necessary reforms on which their membership hinges. So in some cases, countries spend years getting themselves up to standards, only to be denied. Okay, so the second step in the accession process is a letter of intent, where each invited country provides confirmation of its acceptance of the obligations and commitments of membership in the form of a letter of intent from each foreign minister addressed by the NATO Secretary General. And then third, accession protocols are created to be included in the Washington Treaty for each invitee. So according to NATO, every enlargement round went through the same accession protocol where the treaty has been modified. Once it's signed by the member countries, they become amendments or additions to the treaty, which permit the invited countries to become parties to the treaty. And the protocols then need to be ratified by every single member country and their governments. In the U.S., for example, the accession protocols require the Senate to pass legislation by a 2/3 majority. After every member country ratifies the protocols, the NATO Secretary General invites new countries to accede to the Washington Treaty. And only once those countries formally submit their instruments of accession to the U.S. State Department will they formally become NATO members. Quote, joining NATO was never meant to be this hard, but because the alliance is now so big, it just complicates things because you have to get 30 different leaders lined up and on the same page, and 30 different legislators lined up on the same page, Skaluber, a spokesman for NATO, said. NATO was created in the aftermath of World War II as a military alliance which rests on the principle of collective defense. The principle is enumerated in Article 5, and you hear this a lot if you ever watch C-SPAN or watch any coverage of NATO. They always talk about Article 5, which is the big principle that usually leads to war if it's violated. It states that an attack on one member of the alliance is considered an attack on all, hence the benefit of smaller nations being part of this. It's almost like having your big. It's like me having you behind me, Steve. Is what it's like. Someone bullies me. I said, oh, "Excuse me, but I have Steve over here. You don't want to do that, In case you can't tell people, he's a pretty big dude. So, according to NATO, the alliance was created with a 3-pronged aim: again, deterring Soviet expansionism, forbidding the revival of nationalist militarism in Europe through a strong North American presence on the continent, and encouraging European political integration. So the Allies in the West began to see that the Soviets are trying to take their advantage of World War II, seeking to turn countries in Central and Eastern Europe into satellite nations of the Soviet Union, says Jim Townsend, who served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Europe and NATO during the Obama administration. Townsend, who spent 30 years at the Pentagon, says during the earliest days of the Cold War, it's obvious that Russia was going to be very aggressive. So European allies came together and asked us, the U.S., to join a new alliance. And the result was NATO. Dwight Eisenhower was the first military leader, the first supreme Allied commander in Europe. In 1955, the Warsaw Pact was formed by the Soviet Union and several Eastern Bloc nations as the collective defense treaty in response to NATO. Okay. So NATO's membership process has multiple steps. As I said, I'm going to branch over these. The responsibilities to each other is that if any member, obviously in Article 5, if anybody's attacked, then it's going to attack on all members. And if an armed attack does occur, each member will take the action necessary to assist the ally attacked to secure, restore, maintain the security of the North Atlantic area. But even without invoking Article 5, which has been invoked once, and which was following the terrorist attacks in the U.S. on September 11th, NATO launched its first ever anti-terror operation in which they helped patrol the skies over the U.S. post the attack. And we also have sent patrols to the Mediterranean to detect and deter terrorist activity in the wake of 9/11 as well. But even without invoking Article 5, NATO has taken collective defense measures several times, including in Syria and now in Ukraine against Russia. So it's basically NPR likened it to a role of hosting a potluck for member nations and asking everybody to bring something in particular to the picnic. So not everybody can bring potato chips and napkins. So NATO's relationship with Russia until now, there was a time in the 1990s when I thought that Russia might potentially join NATO at some point, as countries like the Czech Republic, Hungary, and Poland were preparing to enter the alliance. But in the 2000s, Russia's trajectory changed. And of course, we know why. So, which brings me to my next story. But I'd love to see what you have anything to offer on this one,
wouldn't
Steve.
Wouldn't that be redundant to add them to NATO? Or wouldn't it eradicate the purpose if Russia went to NATO?
I'm sorry, my audio cut out. One more time.
If Russia went to NATO, I think you have two windows open. If Russia went to NATO, because it's echoing, don't you think the whole purpose of NATO is to thwart Russia? If Russia joined NATO,
yeah,
what's the point?
It would be interesting, but this was during the reign of perestroika, if you will, in which Gorbachev was trying to reform Russia as well as its image. And it would have ended up with NATO probably being disbanded if that was the case.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What would they be there for? It makes no sense. So.
Sorry, I missed the first part of that.
Yeah, no worries. But just a weird thing to have them join. I get the collectiveness of it all and the protectionism, but I also understand that that's us, our Western values, creating an organization to push our Western values on someone that doesn't want them.
Absolutely.
And that I kind of have a problem.
UN, Yeah, of course.
But continue, proceed.
No, I like to hear what your problem is. Tell me. Yes,
well, the only major thing that I'm looking at is if here we are, why is it that we get to push stuff on people? We're a sovereign nation, and if another country said, we don't like how you're doing something, what would we say to said country? We'd flip them the bird.
Yeah, you're welcome to not like it.
But when they go and do things, we are intervening. And this is kind of what makes people hate the United States all over the world, especially in the Middle East, because we meddle with everything. And let's be honest about that. This country,
we go into countries with thousands-year-old rivalries, think we're going to fix it with our Western wisdom in 2 years.
Rectify it like nothing. Yeah, it's just insane. So I just feel like like I said, Russia joining NATO wouldn't make sense. Us continuing to push NATO the way we are is definitively a threat to Russia's existence because NATO was put together to thwart Russia to begin with.
It is. It's basically saying that you'll never, ever be what you used to be, which is what we did to Germany multiple times as well, right? Two times, World War I and World War II. But look at it this way for a second, and I'll end the segment. By the same token, maybe the United States, and I'm not defending some of the imperialistic policies that we have, okay, but I'm never going to tell you that we're always right and we're the moral superior. But the fact is that our influence in the world also includes we're the first people to help anybody whenever they ask for help. Would you not agree?
I do get that.
Earthquakes, mudslides, everything. We're always the ones who are called to answer, right? So we're kind of like saying, well, if you want our help, then you're going to have to play ball a little bit.
And that I understand. That's a negotiating tool. I get that. And that unfortunately puts those countries in an awkward position because we have all the power and the clout. But let's be real. China's emerging, so we're going to see what they end up doing to affect NATO down the road.
The balance of power is definitely going to change in the next few years in the world.
Absolutely.
No question about it.
But good segment, Bill. That's good stuff. Nice, but now let's hear the next one where we learn something every single time we do this episode here at the We Are Marshall podcast. And that's Bill's segment on this day in history. And it may not be specific to this day, but in and around that area. So go ahead, my friend.
Well, this is interesting. This is the first time where even my this day in history fit the theme. This is interesting, okay?
Yep.
Russia, okay? We're talking about Russia. The whole conversation on my end tonight was about NATO, which is essentially about Russia. Well,
Russia.
Yeah, when we had a gentleman named Mikhail Gorbachev, who installed much reform in this former Soviet Union under the guise of reform in Russia. In this case, it was perestroika. I even read his book in 1986 when it came out, 87 or 88 maybe when it came out. It's fascinating stuff. Gorbachev did something that's almost unheard of, and it's largely forgotten today. In 1987, he actually called on the United States for a nuclear weapons treaty. So the whole Cold War, now mind you, Ronald Reagan's last year in office was 1988, okay? But the 7 years before that, he was all about the Cold War, Star Wars, building up on nuclear arsenals. It was a race in which everybody was spending money, and the reason that the wall fell in 1990 because we simply outspent the Soviet Union. They just couldn't keep up, and we won by virtue of a forfeit. Okay, so this is interesting. In 1987, in a surprising announcement, Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev indicated that his nation is ready to sign without delay a treaty designed to eliminate U.S. and Soviet medium-range nuclear missiles from Europe. His offer led to a breakthrough in negotiations and eventually to the signing of the Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces (INF) Treaty in December 1987. Gorbachev and Reagan had been wrestling with the issue of nuclear arms reduction in Europe since 1985, when they first met face-to-face to discuss the matter. A subsequent meeting in 1986 started with high hopes for an agreement, but discussions broke down when Gorbachev linked the issue of the elimination of U.S. and Soviet INF in Europe to U.S. termination of its development of the Strategic Defense Initiative, otherwise known as Star Wars. So, of course, we know what Reagan did about that. He said no. So, however, Reagan and Gorbachev faced pressures to reach a settlement because both countries were excited about the prospect of maybe putting a little dent in the whole nuclear assured destruction thing. And they actually pressured by their own countries. They actually got back at the table. And Reagan was under assault by no-nuke forces in the United States and in Western Europe. He was also faced with the fallout from the Iran-Contra scandal when his administration pretty much got away from him. And I won't get into that scandal.
North.
Oh, God, yeah. And Gorbachev wanted to achieve a cut in nuclear armaments, both to bolster his prestige on the world stage and to provide some much-needed relief for the Soviet economy, which is sagging under the burden of their military budget. So in 1987, Gorbachev announced that the Soviet Union was willing to proceed with negotiations on the INF Treaty, and he dropped the insistence on the Star Wars ceasing. This is unheard of. He dropped his pants on the world stage to get something done. And this time he suggested the problem of medium-range missiles in Europe be singled out from the package of issues also, that a separate agreement on it be concluded. So he was dropping his assistance on the SDI. So the offer was very well timed, and people took notice of it. And they realized that it was not coincidental that the statement was released just days after a high-level presidential review board had issued a stinging report critical of Reagan's administration involvement in the Iran-Contra scandal. So they both needed some good PR. But that's an amazing story because look at how we look at Russia now. In 1987, we were looking at a possibility of world reform. The most aggressive, massive military force in the entire world went from being, aggressive and threatening to looking for a compromise. And now we have a guy who is nothing less than a despot. He's a dictator who calls himself president, but he kills anybody who runs against him. such a difference in those years, wouldn't you say?
The irony of Putin is this, okay? To me, our most knowledgeable and in the know president we ever had was George Bush Sr. Okay?
Yeah.
Putin,
Former CIA head, I would hope so.
yep, Vice
Yeah.
President, CIA head. Putin
Yeah.
is George Bush
He is.
here, but not, but Bush wasn't a dictator and any of this, but they are one and the same when
Yep.
it comes to their resume. Okay?
KGB.
Putin headed the KGB. You know, he sat behind Gorbachev and actually pulled a lot of strings under Yeltsin, Gorbachev, and all them for a long time. So it's interesting, Russia's history. There's a lot of rich, awesome stuff that has come out of Russia. Some of the things I hear, it's a beautiful place. There's some cities that are amazing. So, I mean, when you've got,
the arts are thriving more than anywhere in the world in Russia.
And that's the amazing thing. When you've got all this culture and stuff that you can offer to the world, but you got a person leading your country that is just an evil, despotic individual. What are you going to do? You're losing out. Those people are missing out, just like President Xi is doing to the Chinese people. The Chinese people, and we'll go to the Ayatollahs of Iran. I mean, these three countries all work and coordinate with one another, yet they have a lot to offer the world. I just wish we could come to some kind of peaceful thing, and I'd love to learn from some of these people. But that's an interesting segment, Bill. It was really good for everybody to learn about history through NATO, about Russia itself, nuclear treaties. I mean, this is good stuff for people to remember and learn. But we are at the end of the podcast. We're a little over, but we had a lot to get in, and we haven't been here for a little bit. So I'm going to end it like I always do with one of my stories, which is a feel-good story, human interest, a technological breakthrough, or a healthcare breakthrough. And this next one, I had a conversation with Bill a long time ago about this and confused why this hadn't transpired. And now finding it now makes me happy, and I think it's a great thing for the people that we will discuss this on. But an Italian company, an Italian-made Exoskeleton, which is like a device that you'd wear, exo means exterior, gets disabled users to walk and stand. Get that straight now. There's a robotic exoskeleton they can fit in, which will move them around, which blew my mind, like I said, that this had never transpired since we utilize wheelchairs and crutches and a number of other devices. Why this wasn't incorporated to do an all-encompass thing to help in this capacity till now is beyond me, but it's great that it's here. This is a new robotic exoskeleton manufactured in Italy that promises to improve the quality of life and mobility of disabled or injured people in a creative way. The controls feature 3 modes of operation depending on the level of use the wearer has in his or her legs, and it's made up of lightweight interchangeable parts. Developed through a partnership by the Italian Institute of Technology and the National Insurance Institute of Workplace Injuries, the exoskeleton is called the Twin and was unveiled this Friday during a press conference held at the Museum of Science and Technology in Milan. Battery-powered motors located at the knee and hip joints power normal motion based on 3 different modes: walk mode, retrain mode, and twin care mode. Walk mode is for users who are paralyzed from the waist down and moves their legs for them with adjustable gait and walk speeds. Retrain mode is for users who have some control over their legs and need to build up strength and mobility. To accommodate this, the exoskeleton provides assistance when it feels motion, similar to electric pedal assistance on electric bike. Lastly, in twin care mode, the exoskeleton helps people who are injured in only one leg. Software onboard an Android tablet matches the movement and gait of a functional leg to the exoskeleton wrapped around the non-functional leg, ensuring the movements are even and balanced. In development since 2013, the Twin has a battery life of about 4 hours. That kind of seems to be a problem, but I hope they rectify that. And is made with lightweight aluminum alloy modules that can be disassembled for transport or if they need to be upgraded. It's still just a prototype, and crutches need to be used to help maintain balance, but it's an inspiring sight to see such cutting-edge technology being developed on behalf of the disabled. Now, this is wonderful. I mean, a lot of what happens to disabled people in this capacity is they lose the ability to care for themselves and move
Sure.
around. So now if you can provide them something, yeah, it may take some time for the public to get used to some individual walking around in some robotic uniform. But if they can then look past that and see what it's doing for this individual and anybody around this individual, because we all forget that when there is a disabled person, that affects the people around them just as much as it affects the person dealing with it, because they have to take care of this person and do a lot of things for them. That person loses all their ability to function on their own, and those people take all over. Yeah, so everybody's lives have changed. So what do you think about this bill? I'm sure you've ran into some people in your health issues that were paralyzed or, had issues like this, could probably benefit from something like this.
Well, I grew up with a cousin who, while I was around 12, he dove off a deck drunk at a party, and he drove headfirst into 2 feet of water. He was paralyzed his entire life, and his family paid the price for that. And he was obviously never the same. He was paralyzed from the waist down, and that technology, of course, never existed in the 70s. But think about how he went from being a strapping, on his way to being a successful young guy, and in his 20s, his life would essentially change for the worse forever. I told you, maybe I mentioned to you, I once saw a guy at a local amusement park that had no limbs. He walked with 4 prosthetics. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, he was third base without these things. He could, you can't do anything, and he was just walking right by. And then you take people who have arms that don't work or legs that don't work. They're basically in the same situation, and then they can actually, even for 4 hours, they can have a normal, feel like normal for a couple of, for a certain minute that day, do something,
The 3 modes of this thing were fascinating to look at. The retrain one is great because that will help a physical therapist to not only get this person to be more mobile or motorized than they would have been. These are some great things. I love seeing it. I mean, I have a brother who is disabled. He's had both his legs amputated, and I know my brother, this is something he would wholeheartedly get. But like you were saying, that guy that walked around with 2 prosthetic arms and 2 legs, my brother was kind of like that when he lived with me in my old house. He'd put his prosthetic legs on, both of them. He'd jump on his motorcycle, and he'd take off. It was pretty fascinating to watch, and he'd go all over the place.
Sure.
But
these people, they you can't help but have it be a hit to your overall self-esteem and all that when you can't do the things that you just think about, the most basic functions. We don't think much about it until you meet somebody who doesn't have those abilities. This is, if you're going to look for equity in life, this is a way to do it. This is the kind of equity we need: physical mobility.
And so it's so true. We take for granted the abilities that we have that they don't, and people need to reflect on that a little bit more and be grateful for simple things that we have in life. I think that's a huge thing. And what I mean by just the ability to reach up in a cabinet and grab something, or to take a couple of steps to just get up in the middle of the night to walk to your bathroom, to go to the bathroom. These may be tediums in the middle of the evening to do that, but don't take it for granted, because there are some people that can't at all.
Just any way you can take care of yourself. That's something that people, they don't notice how important it was until they lose the ability to do so. And
that's what we have for you today here at the We Are Marshall podcast. This was good. We appreciate you coming out to listen. We'd really like it at the We Are Marshall podcast if you would go like and share our social media all over the place. We have stuff on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Locals, X, Truth Social, and of course Rumble. You can download the Rumble application for free. It is similar to YouTube. It's just more of a free speech platform than YouTube is. And you can subscribe. You can subscribe or follow our channel on there, which has our full season 1 episodes and the season 2 episodes that we're doing now. And also check out our website at www.wearemarshallpodcast.com. On that website, you can see a multitude of things. There is bios for Bill and I. There are episodes, there are connections to the Rumble channel, and also Bill has a link there for his blog. Click on that. Check out some of the things Bill's saying in his blog. There's some really good stuff there. And also go check out on Amazon Vella his episodic stories or blogs or short stories he's writing. Very interesting stuff for you to see what's going on in the mind of William McIntyre. But anyway, you can also go check out, you can also go check out on the website my book that's out there now, The Unforeseen Enemy. Check it out on Amazon. You can purchase it. And also you can check out my other book that's up there for sale, The Perception Therapist. Do support me. Check them out. And I got a multitude of books coming out this year also. We'd also enjoy it if you would for us and to help our sponsors. Go check out our sponsors. On our webpage on the top left, you can click on Local Prints New Hampshire out of Hampstead, New Hampshire, a full-service screen printing business. They are international and domestic. Click on that link. Go see what they have to offer and give them some business and see what they can do for you. We'd appreciate that, and so would they. And also check out our large sponsor, MateConnector.com. It's a large dating website with all the bells and whistles of the players in the dating market, but a much more inexpensive price so it don't break the bank while you're out there dating, whining and dining, whoever you are, to go forward in some dating scene. So at this point, if you have any questions or issues, you can reach me, Steve, at wearemarshallpodcast.com, and you can reach Bill at wearemarshallpodcast.com. We'd love for you, like I said, go check out our website, go check out our channel, and we'll be back again this week with another We Are Marshall podcast episode. We hope you have a good evening. We appreciate you listening in, and you all have a good evening. Thank you.
Good night.